prior to zoning. So based on research that I've done, specifically about the Art League, the Art League was made a non-conforming use in 1967 when we adopted zoning. That use was not a permitted use in the original zoning code.
Why would they not want another similar project within 600?
I think the Art League would not.
It's not like a liquor license.
Right. These use standards are they are largely taken from the school use standards, the conditional use standards in the old code that apply to school uses, the similar institutional use. So we have that separation requirement with private schools. So the reasoning behind that is so that the neighborhood residential area doesn't get inundated with several of these art and cultural centers. And we have had complaints before. I can pull up the old record. I've experienced it directly because the Art League, when I first got here in 2007, or 2006 I got here, but I think it was in 2007, they came through with building a parking lot. They had gotten a grant to build a parking lot next to their building. A lot of public testimony was put on the record about the traffic generated by the Art League in the residential neighborhoods. I think you need I think that's why we're proposing it to be a special use, so you'd have a public hearing process, and because you're putting an institutional use in a residential neighborhood. So that's why you put some of these standards in place to protect the residential neighborhood. And then specifically what would apply to the Art League would be that number 7, which basically they could rebuild their existing facility since it had existed prior to zoning. But any expansion of it would have to comply with these standards and would require a special use permit from the city. So I'm just trying to balance kind of what I know of some of the issues previously have come up with residents. I experienced it with the expansion or the building of their parking lot in 2007, and then in the research I came across when they purchased, or through a grant, they purchased some vacant land that they have just up the block. Same type of record was put, same type of testimony was put in the record. Residents expressing concerns about traffic generated by this use in their neighborhood.
Okay.
Question, or you want me to move on?
Any questions? Go ahead.
Okay. The next change is related to boat and marine sales and service uses. This is related to some of the comments made. I think they were made publicly. I think some comments by the board. This really applies to the RDD4 zoning district. The RDD4 zoning district that we're currently rezoning is in downtown in the old Cosmo area on the north end, the north end of the downtown redevelopment area near Fairview Avenue and North Beach Street. But that RDD4 zoning district is also planned to be used in the Blue Road area where it's adjacent to waterways. So a lot of this language deals that you see in the next few pages talks about in the RDD4 that boat and marine service uses can only be located in the Blue Road redevelopment area. So this wouldn't really apply to what we're rezoning right now, but in future rezonings.
What about all the one or two, maybe one, existing on North Beach Street, the marine services, repairs? That's
When you say North Beach Street in Blue Road, or like north of Fairview or south of Fairview?
Maybe the 700-800 block. You've got.
I think that's north of Fairview, and we'd actually we presented previously some maps. We were looking at that area to be the RDD7 zone district, which would allow those uses.
There's no North Talking on the east side.
North Beach Street.
The east side of North Beach Street.
North of Fairview.
North of Fairview.
Right, north of Fairview.
That's going to be another district.
Yeah. Yes, the RDD7. That's currently M1. The RDD7 is a local service, kind of similar, but would be tailored to the purposes of. More fitting with the downtown redevelopment plan.
I thought that the east side, you didn't put any maps, by the way.
Need maps?
There's no maps in here, but I thought the east side was part of the Blue Beach Street, and the west side was M1.
Yes, but the east side is also M1. So a lot of the Blue Road redevelopment area is M1 zoning district.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, anyway, I guess the question was the existing. Well, we're not even talking about that block.
No.
Okay.
For RDD4. The RDD4 would really, the intent of it is more mixed residential, but you could have marine uses, and that's more along the river, like along Blue Road, on the east side of Blue Road. Then you got to flip a couple pages until you get to Marina.
I had a question about, if I get the page before you, docking facility.
Yes.
Only one dock is allowed on a lot with less than 100 feet of water frontage, and additional allowed for each additional 50 foot. Are you?
That's existing language in the code, and a lot of this was revised, and it relates to the manatee protection plan.
So you're basically talking about the intercoastal. I
Yeah.
mean, what about like in the root basin there? I mean, this is not referring to what
This would apply to
future
It
development?
could, and this could apply to that. But any type of development that we do in the, if we were to have, let's say, and that's where you go to the next page, a marina would come there. There is a way for developments to get additional, what are called slips.
That's the question.
Yeah, they can get additional slips. There's a process. There's another process for that in the code, and it's called the slip allocation ordinance.
So this is basically talking about residential.
This is what you're allowed. Well, no, it's commercial or residential, but this is what you're allowed as of right.
The county manatee protection plan, which is enforced within the city, requires each city to limit the number of boat slips that can be allowed, and that's the way to protect manatees.
But
Okay.
we also have there's also a surplus. So there's certain docks you're allowed as of right, but then if you want to tap the surplus through another process, you can get an allocation from our surplus slips that the city has.
And the larger point being, I'm explaining why the provisions are written the way that they're written. So.
Okay.
Okay, on the page on marina, these are specific standards for marinas in the RDD4, essentially, that would apply to, again, this is really not really applicable to our current rezoning that we're working on, but if any future rezonings in the Blue Road redevelopment area. If you want to go on to, let's see, the restaurant 18, section 18, which is the eating and drinking establishments. This essentially, there's an addition under restaurant, which would allow restaurants in the RDD6 to be assessed, so bed and breakfast could have accessory restaurants.
So the Coquina Inn on Palmetto would not be.
No, and I don't believe they currently have a full operating restaurant. The only one that ever had a restaurant in the old Daytona area was the Live Oak Inn. So this would apply. I mean, obviously other buildings this could be applicable to on South Beach Street, but one key one would be the Live Oak Inn. The ability for them to have a restaurant, but they would just have to make sure they have sufficient parking. And same with special eating. This is a different type of restaurant. Same, a special eating establishment. It's more like a coffee house, ice cream shop. So if they didn't work and do like a full service restaurant, they could have more of a special eating type restaurant. under 19, the changes are related to motor vehicle sales and service uses. Talks about sales or rental of light vehicles in the RDD4 zoning district. I'm going to give you broadly what is being attempted here. I basically, this again is based on all the previous conversations at previous meetings, where we discussed in the RDD4 bringing back the permitted, make sure all the permitted uses that were in the old zoning code related to RDD4 related to automobile sales or rental are in the new code for RDD4. So these are all these standards that you see here are the old conditions that applied to sales or rental of light vehicles in the RDD4 under the old code.
I didn't understand B. The project shall include accessory retail and service establishments which contribute to the creation of evening activity centers and are accessible to pedestrians when it's falling under sales or rentals of...
So what it's basically saying is if you're doing vehicle sales, you have to have a retail component. I believe under these standards, this all predates me, but just the research I've done, I think it was called Arlen Ness. I believe that was the name of the project up there. I can't remember what it's, All Sports, I think is what's currently. But when that building was built, it was built meeting these standards. So they did motor vehicle sales, they did some manufacturing that was allowed, but they had the retail use component to it to meet those standards.
Okay, so, I mean, the evening activity centers, I mean, you know, could they not give somebody a...
If you want, like, again, I understand what you're saying. So what we could revise this, I basically put this in with the original wording as the old code. I know the reality is I don't think we have much evening activity, so if this board doesn't feel that that's necessary.
It, you know, could eliminate somebody from doing something if they say, well, you're not going to be open in the evening. You're not creating, 9 to 5, 9 to 6.
Right. So what we could do is strike the evening activity centers, or just say that they have to have the retail component. I can understand.
And then on the next page, you've got the building shall exceed 20,000 square feet of enclosed area. That's pretty huge.
Yes.
It's sort of like eliminating any... I mean, what if a building...
Well, that is... They don't... the 20,000 square feet is only if they're going to be doing what it's called this light motor vehicle manufacturing use.
Manufacturing.
Right. In my understanding, I believe that goes back to the Arlen Ness. They were doing building vehicles there. So this use, but this condition allows for somebody who's maybe selling specialty vehicles. They're selling them on site. They got the retail component, but they could also be doing the specialty manufacturing of motor vehicles. And I'm trying to think of a good example. Right, what's coming to mind is like a chopper shop.
What happens if, let's say Carl's Speed Shop goes dark, and it's 18,000 square foot, and he can do, somebody can do repair and light they can
do sales or rental of light vehicles as long as they meet all these conditions.
But Carl's Speed Shop, for instance, has, a back garage and warehouse type situation where somebody can customize motorcycles and do retail sales. Goes dark for 3 months, and it's only 18,000 square foot, so he's not allowed to sell it to that guy?
Well, you wouldn't be able to do the custom manufacturing. Now, if you want me to, is look at...
and I don't know if Carl's Speed Shop is 20 or 18. I'm just...
do you want...
it's a big 20,000 square foot building in the downtown redevelopment area. There's just a couple that met that standard.
Yeah.
So if somebody, and I'm just using Carl's, who customizes motorcycles, manufactures, and it's under 20,000 foot, he loses the value of being able to resell that property. Let's say Carl dies and his wife leaves it closed
Right.
for 6 months or 4 months. They can't sell it to a similar business that does customizing of a small vehicle.
I don't know if, well, I don't know if Carl's is doing the customization of,
I think that's what he does, customizes
Yeah.
motorcycles.
I think he does too.
Yeah, he does.
Maybe the better question is, where did 20,000 square feet come from?
again, it's, for my purpose, I just pulled everything from the old code. What the, I'd have to go back, look at the old
That was in the old code?
Yeah.
20,000 square feet
Right.
is a big building. I mean, we put manufacturers of products in buildings that size.
Yeah.
One in Ormond right now, that size building. That's a big
I
building.
think you should take a look at that because it could devalue the property of a property in that area that's being used for that purpose now.
Unless the intent is to eliminate manufacturing downtown.
Unless that's the...
Well, now there's something to keep in mind. This future land use in this area we're looking at is high intensity mixed use. It specifically states saying any combination of commercial or residential use except any industrial use.
So if the goal is to keep
Right.
manufacturing out of this district,
Yeah,
then leave it at 20,000. Or
I think that might have been some of the thinking in the past.
Why would you just eliminate it?
Well, once again, and I'm just...
You
has
gotta
nothing
have property
to...
there.
somebody owns a piece of property and you take away different uses that it was allowed when they bought it, and just like the RD6 on Ridgewood, when you had all those people here that you said, well, we had 46 uses, now we got 14.
Maybe
So
that's
they-
a legal question for Ben. I mean, are you taking a property right away if you eliminate a current use from a property owner who now can't resell a building for the same use?
Well, the Land Development Code would provide that those kinds of uses are not conforming and they'd be allowed to continue until destroyed or abandoned.
But assuming it in using Buddy's scenario that if the guy decided to sell it to another similar manufacturer, but we upped the square footage requirement to do the same thing he's doing at a lesser square footage, are we eliminating a property right that could end us up in court?
I don't think there's a taking there. If somebody were to file a Byrd-Harris Act claim, there'd be time to negotiate a settlement and create an exception through that. And so this is kind of a generic situation.
And really, if you're looking specifically, we're talking about these properties on North B Street. These are already at these property owners' signature knowledge. They were converted to a planned development that only allows right now multifamily residential
Give them
use.
back what they got,
Yeah.
what they got.
And any type of change in permitted uses on these properties was done when it was originally rezoned from BR, I believe probably BR2 to when it became RDD4. That's where they kind of began to limit, because BR2 has a lot of broad commercial uses in it.
But when they change ownership, does that same grandfathering?
The zoning
They
and land use
grandfathered
runs
it.
with the land.
Yeah.
They're grandfathered in if it's...
Yeah, they're
because it
grandfathered
was
in.
dark for 91 days, right?
90, yes.
Well, if the goal is to keep manufacturing out of this district, which I would agree with, then I think you leave it where it is. But on the other
I'm
hand,
just speaking about
Yeah.
it.
I think Jason made a point about the land use, the underlying land use, and I think that is a key factor. We have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that probably we have to take a serious look at how that industrial manufacturing now plays into this. We probably
well,
need
that
to.
of course, that raises a question to me. In the comp plan, is manufacturing, in fact, an option within the comp plan for this district specifically.
Not within the high-intensity mixed use. There's other areas of downtown where that is appropriate, where we have future land use of industrial use
That's
or
in the
local
comp
service.
plan
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
Might want to look at an amendment to the comp plan
To allow manufacturing.
to take it out, if that's the goal.
I think the land use is pretty much saying, take it out.
Yeah.
And I think that, so in other words, just putting everything back in from the old code is not where we want to go. We need to fine tune this so that we don't have something that allows the industrial,
But you
right?
have- Don't you want to be careful that you don't have a code that says one thing in a comprehensive land use
Yeah,
plan? and
exactly.
Another thing?
Exactly.
So you really need to bring those two into consistency
That's
with
right.
each other, which would mean an amendment to the comp plan.
No, actually, in this case, we wouldn't have to touch the comprehensive plan. We'd be following it if we changed the land development code.
Okay.
If we just didn't put this language back.
Yes, sir.
Okay, as long as they're both consistent.
I'm curious. A year ago, maybe two, they went through some sort of marketing quote survey, and they were discussing keeping businesses open after hours. How does, or extending the hour of the activities downtown, how does not being an activity center fit into that? Are we trying to create more activities downtown evening time, or are we not? I don't know.
Yes, but not maybe necessarily
In that area.
in this location. I think our concentration of retail, entertainment, restaurant uses are more in the historic shopping district. It's on Beach Street, but it's more the area between Orange Avenue and Bay. Now, if there's a possibility, if you go back to our redevelopment plan, our comprehensive plan, it really talks about this being a residential area, more higher intensity residential area on North Beach Street. And being that this is an urban area, you might have some mix of some commercial uses. That's why it's the high intensity mixed use. And some of those might be
Retail.
retail and late night, something, coffee house open late or something, serving the residents. But at the same time, I don't think it's a overnight activity, but it might be an evening activity. But you need to have the residences to drive the commercial.
Any more questions? Go ahead, last page. Curious about that one.
So what's that?
I said, I'm curious about this.
Yes, okay. This is actually not related to the two previous rezonings. This is going to be something you're probably going to see at your October meeting. We have been approached by a group of business group that's looking to open up a arcade museum what they're calling an arcade museum in what is the old Coliseum. So this would be 178 North Beach Street.
What is an arcade museum?
Arcade, well, I'll describe as best, but defer any of your judgments regarding it to when the applicant gets before you next month. Minors, if you're familiar with the old Coliseum, the theater, the Daytona, or the theater that was down there, the front part of it they are going to have as a retail shop selling, arcade-related type retail items. You'll be able to pay one price, go in the back, and they will have a collection up to maybe 100 old pinball machines, the old arcade machines from the 70s and 80s. The idea is, and they'll have information on these machine, on the historic background of each of the games. In addition, they're also going to have a restaurant, like a pizza, just a kind of a pizza restaurant, and I believe they're also planning on having craft beer sales. They're going to apply for a 2 COP.
Do they have others somewhere that you could Google?
I mean, something existing? They're not an existing business. I think this is a new startup. So I mean, but when they come, so they've approached us. We've met with them as staff. We told them we put together what is a text change. This use, so when staff reviewed it, and I reviewed it with the planning staff, this use was determined to be even though they're calling themselves a museum, but because the interactive and really predominantly interactive, the arcade machines will still be running. They're saying up to 98% of the machines they'll have will still be operating. It was planning's determination, staff's determination that it fits in the definition of what is called other indoor recreation and entertainment use. So essentially, that use is arcades, it's dance halls, that's what is an other indoor entertainment use. But they're also going to have accessory retail and accessory restaurant with alcohol beverage service. The other indoor recreation entertainment use is not currently a permitted use in the RDD1 zoning district. So what as staff we're proposing to do is create this as a special use with these conditions that you see below. And these were kind of brainstormed between myself and the planning staff as conditions to make sure the RDD1 zoning district is the Beach Street retail district. Essentially runs from Orange Avenue up to really up to the post office. Predominantly, the purpose of that zoning district is to create a a retail and restaurant district. So we do allow other uses beyond retail. For instance, real estate offices in that zoning district. They're seen as compatible to the retail focus of the district. But we usually, what we do with those uses, we limit them with one per block. And that's what I'm doing, what has been proposed before you. So we put a minimum square footage, and because of the nature of the use, we put the same kind of language that's in the alcohol beverage license criteria about closing hours. Put that in there. And then a requirement they show a detailed floor plan showing where the use is to go. And that they could have they could also have like accessory retail or restaurant use combined with it.
Can you put a liquor license in there?
Yes, as long as it meets the restaurant criteria.
Are you familiar with game rooms?
I mean by game rooms, like the old arcades. What I'm calling an
I
arcade.
get a lot of calls of people.
You're talking about?
They go into these rooms and they have to.
Oh, you're talking escape rooms?
Escape rooms.
Yes.
Sorry.
That use would fall under this category, and I've been.
So that would limit.
Yeah.
With them there, that whole block would be off.
Right, so they would have to be in the other, one of the other two blocks.
So an escape room facility is allowed on Beach Street?
Not currently, but with this, would be allowed as a special use with this text amendment.
So somebody can put an escape room in on another
No block, yes. And
why would you want to limit? I mean, it seems like something that young people are doing. Why would you want to limit?
well, again, it goes back to the primary purpose of the zoning district, which is to be a retail and restaurant district. So for the same kind of logic that we limited the real estate offices.
Yeah, but that's entertainment, and I mean, this place is a restaurant and entertainment. Why would you want to limit that? Because that's what you want downtown.
I mean, if that's their recommendation, we could do that. It just seems everything we've been trying to do in terms of again, you look at the redevelopment plan, the stated purpose of the district, what our incentive programs are, our focus on getting retail uses down there. I don't think you want to kind of everything that the DDA is doing with the marketing and promoting downtown as a retail restaurant district. You don't want to oversaturate it with entertainment. You just want those uses to kind of complement the retail district. That's just, whatever your recommendation is.
What is an escape room? I fantasize a
You've
lot.
got rooms.
Wasn't that what the last meeting
Yeah,
was all about?
You've got rooms, different rooms set up, and a group of 4 or 8 people go into it, and they've got to answer. I believe you've got to answer questions until you can get out of it and go to the next room or something like
Imagine
that.
us trapped in this room and we have to go through a series of questions.
Yeah, like being trapped in
Right,
there.
10 of us,
I
or
never
like
heard
that.
of such a
And it's
thing.
very popular. I've had
Good
half a
Lord.
dozen people in the last 6 months, and the problem is there's no zoning for them. Or very little zoning, like on Seabreeze, you can be over there, but almost.
Well, it should be allowed in. I would say any tourist. Oh, you know what? I think this other indoor I was looking at the other night. I know what you're saying.
But it's not only here, in many towns, there's just very little access. for-
Well, and some cities might be struggling with. I think at first we struggled with what use category it falls under. But my understanding, a determination has been made that is it's this category in the city. But then the question is, where is that use permitted?
You know, but here's my thought is that, it's an entertainment venue. There's no drinking involved that, they're not trying to be a restaurant or
Uh.
2COP and that, so if there's one there, they have they can go to the restaurants after or before.
Yeah. Other indoor recreation use is allowed. I mean, it's allowed in quite a few zoning districts. It's allowed in BR1, BR2.
Yeah, but
BA.
Go to BR1 and BR2.
Well, a lot of the, but it's. I mean, it's allowed in all the T districts, which there's a lot of tourist districts along our corridors. All Atlantic Avenue.
Okay.
Ridgewood is T2.
I think if we overemphasize that kind of use, we may be straying from our perception of what we want Beach Street to be. I mean, my feeling has been that we were looking for shops, restaurants with entertainment, but not necessarily game rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I can see a use like Jason's discussing for the old Coliseum property, because that's kind of unique, and restaurants don't seem to work in there very
Well, and the other option has created detrimental. The nightclub. We've had problems.
Yeah.
We've had
So
issues with.
this antique pool, whatever they are, pinball machines, slot machines, whatever you want to put in there. I can see that for that location, but the street in general, I think we're looking for more unique shops. We're not trying to create a tourist street. Some of these uses might be more appropriate for Main Street or Atlantic Avenue, where the tourists tend to congregate. We want them to get that out of their system there, and then come downtown and shop and patronize coffee shops, clothing stores, whatever we can attract down there. But I just don't feel comfortable with the idea of expanding the game room type of use downtown. Potentially, it could attract families, teenagers, that sort of thing, but I still don't think it's a good fit.
Anybody else?
I have a question. Just so I got it clear, these are antique machines. It says museum.
I'm not sure what the definition if the antique is. It's older than 50 years. Some of these I don't believe are.
Sounds like they're trying to get around something when they say antique museum
Yeah.
game room, that you're still going to go in there and they're still going to come in and pay money I guess they take money to play these machines.
Yes. And again, that's why staff made the determination it's not a museum, because they're saying over 90 to 98% of the machines will be usable. So it's really more fitting to the indoor entertainment use. And what we're proposing, we think it's a good use for the Coliseum, but we just don't want, we don't want to just put it as a permitted use in the zoning district where it could just be anyone with any. And we've had the inquiries about like escape rooms, some other indoor entertainment uses that could, if it was just a permitted use with no standards, or these special standards that you see before you, it could it could result in Beach Street losing that retail restaurant focus.
Yeah, I think this is as far as we should go. As far as an antique is concerned, if it was around when I was a teenager, that's the definition of an antique.
Any other questions? Any public questions? Mike, is that right?
You're doing a fabulous job, buddy. Fabulous.
It's the food they feed us, John.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue. I didn't see the documents that you have in front of you, and from what's been said, I've got one question and one from something else. In your reference to restaurants and what's permitted in restaurants, 10 years ago we tweaked what were considered restaurants on Main Street, and because of the wording, et cetera, restaurants are no longer required to have kitchens. They are no longer required to serve food. We're having that problem on Main Street. So in your new tweaking, do your restaurants in the future require the sale of food or having kitchens? If we have a problem with it, it might happen to you all. So looking at the wording. And secondly, it popped up at the last meeting, submerged land. There's two prominent properties. One was near the Seabreeze Bridge. Nobody knew there was submerged land out there. Some guy bought it and wanted to put a marina in it. And the residents went nuts because it was right in front of their apartments and condos. You have a submerged land on South Beach Street down by the Marina Point. At one point, the staff recommended this huge, humongous hotel because the guy wanted to put in condos, and the staff recommended putting in a hotel because then you could wipe out all these requirements and put it in. And it was like you could build up to the sidewalk, and then you could use your submerged land as part of your overall land to go up. While nothing is on either one of these lands, I'm asking you to look at, asking the staff to look at the submerged land in your area to prevent that kind of thing happening again, because the Marina Point only has one entrance, and what they were going to do, they were going to park all the loading and unloading on their driveway, so people would have to sit and wait until there was loading and unloading. So there were a lot of problems to it. So rather than go through all that again, if you can limit what can be done with submerged land, to do it now so that you're not in a lawsuit against somebody who wants to do something in the future. So again, be careful what we went through on the beach side and then the submerged land thing. Thank you.
Okay. I had some questions, but I'm gonna let you go. Well, we didn't go, you didn't go over the changes that you're doing in the
Chart?
chart. But
The only thing I did, I just, if there's any edits to it, I made changes based on your comments at the last meeting. And I'm sorry, I was running from one meeting to another. I didn't bring my notes from that meeting to tell you which was specific. I have not done any work yet on, as a follow-up on the section 4.7, like the zoning district standards. But I did some tweaking in the charts, but that was all based on my notes from the meeting. And really everything in here too also just references what I talked about specifically, such as you'll see the Art and Cultural Center is a special use in RDD 6. I just made some changes as I was developing the marine uses in Blue Road. I just made some edits to make sure those references are correct. That's what the red underlined text is on where it refers back to the use specific standards. I think on Bottle Club, I made sure it was worded that it's prohibited, since I'm dealing with that right now.
Notice that.
So,
I have a quick question.
On, I think I'm trying to understand how these things work. But RDD 4, I guess, the residential development, they're allowing for a 180-foot building, only 10-foot setback. And that would be
Correct.
where? RDD
Well, remember, that's RDD 4 is the zoning district on North, so that's the high-intensity mixed-use district. So it would be very similar to how our setbacks are on RDD 1, RDD 2, RDD 3, which are in the core residential district. I'm sorry, the core commercial district of downtown, where you have that are also high-intensity mixed-use. So this is
They're
your.
trying to create a graded, like if you get close to Ridgewood, it could, 18 stories. That's 18 stories.
That's in the RDD 1, 2, and 3 zoning district. It's the RDD 4, which is to the north of that.
I mean, that just seems.
So it's always talked about in our comp plan about those, what are the old former auto lots on North Beach Street, being able to take advantage of the river views, which implies higher structures. And we've had condo towers proposed there previously. So that's consistent with the comp plan. Now there was, what I haven't finished, there was some discussion at the last meeting regarding the height, not so much with the tiering, I think with downtown, but what the impact of this in like Blue Road. So I need to draft up some way to differentiate between downtown where RDD 4 would be, and up in the Blue Road redevelopment area.
In that same text, how come you put non-applicable as far as maximum lot coverage?
Again, that's similar to. I'm trying to see where you see. Oh, that's very similar to. We don't have maximum lot coverages on RDD1, in those districts that overlap with the high intensity mixed use, so it's just consistent. What you're trying to encourage is more urban type development in those areas. New urbanism.
Mr. Chairman, are you in order for a motion?
What?
Or do you want a motion?
We don't need a motion. I'm sorry. Let me talk a little bit, just some process, what's going to occur. This is a discussion.
Let's make a motion whether or not he gets stuck in.
Discussion item. This is a discussion item. We'll have this back again. Text amendments as discussion item at the next meeting. Our intent, our schedule is to take this to the planning board at their October meeting.
You do not want a recommendation?
No, you don't. We don't need it. Any of your feedback, I've taken notes. I'll compile it in, and you'll see another version of this at your next meeting. And then, if
you feel cheated, Mr. Chairman, or we don't get a chance to.
So,
unless you want to vote specifically on anything, I'm not trying to say no. You can make a motion, but we're not looking for any type of specific motion or recommendation. We just needed is a discussion item. Looking for your feedback.
all right.
You have it.
Okay. And then what you expect at your next meeting, long as the Arcade Museum expect to see them, you will be making a recommendation on that Arcade Museum at your next meeting.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Windy City, what's going on with that?
They have been to the Historic Preservation Board. They have gotten approval for renovations on the outside. They're intending on applying for historic preservation grants, so they're going to restore some of the front facade of the building back to historically what was appropriate. I think over the last few years they've...
What building are you asking guys to?
Windy City, 230 South Beach Street?
Yes.
Yep.
It is intended to be a restaurant called Bourbon on Beach Street, and it's a barbecue place. And then they're going to have what they're calling a speakeasy atmosphere on the second floor. But they have some building. They've applied for the certificate of appropriateness for those exterior renovations. To my knowledge, they have not applied for the building permits yet for any of the interior, and they'll have to go through the alcohol beverage requirements too. And it's a new restaurant. It's been vacant more than 90 days. It's going to have to comply with the current alcohol beverage rules for Beach Street.
I have an item I'd like to bring to the attention of this board, which may need to go to the planning board or even to the city commission. And it may be that we have no authority over this, but in a recent conversation with Jim France, and this topic has come up on, I think, in Holly Hill. But it does affect the view from Beach Street and Ballou Road and so forth. There are any number of abandoned boats that sit in the waterway out there, particularly from the bridge, the Mason Street Bridge, to the south. They're sunk, several of them are, and I'm not sure how far down they go, but I know there are several of them out there. And that's probably a problem of the Coast Guard. Am I getting feedback? I'm just being haunted by something here. But is there anything we can do about that, or it certainly is a distracting element for Daytona Beach generally?
Oh, look, I do not know what our jurisdiction over the intercoastal.
You remember
is.
when the
I know Holly Hill just went through it.
Yeah, the houseboat was abandoned.
Yeah.
It was in the river, and
And I think it's fine, Ken. I think it's fine. Florida Inland Navigation
yeah,
District. I'm
probably
pretty sure
is.
that's it.
Or the Corps of Engineers or somebody.
Yeah.
But it is really an eyesore, and it's getting worse because more and more of them are accumulating out there. And there are probably 3 or 4 of them that quarter mile just south of the bridge.
I'll speak to that too. I am aware that there is some effort on the part of the city to address it. At least in some internal meetings I've been in, we're trying to address what's going on with some of these boats that are out there in the river right now. So there is some action.
Okay, ready to adjourn?
Buddy, this is your best meeting.
Public comment.
Public comment.
Yeah, public comment. You still have it on your agenda, so.
Yes,
I'm gonna skip
I'd
it.
like to say that this is Buddy's best meeting ever.
I'm just so excited.
Fabulous.
Okay, so we're
Yes,
asking,
Let's ask for public comment.
anybody, any public comment?
I just gave you one.
Okay, now,
Yeah,
Now.
meeting adjourned.
thank you.